All right, well let's gavel this to order. Olatunji Yearwood, I really appreciate your time here today with me. I've been corresponding with you and Alicia to have you come in to talk to the Princeton students and hopefully to the NYU students at some point, if
Yeah.
COVID clears up a little bit. But I was looking around online at ever since we met, looking at some of your music, some of your performances. You appeared on the X Factor UK. Silk Monarch, like a bunch of stuff that I'm aware of, but I
Yeah.
have had no personal experience with. Like I'm not a calypsonian. Clearly, I'm not. I did have never been on a like X Factor. I've never. Like, I just have a lot of questions for you. But before we get into that, I'm curious if you could just take me back to like baby Olatunji and like I know you grew up in Trinidad, but can you just tell me a little bit about your background, like what your upbringing was like, what your folks were like, what they did for a living? Like, can you just start back and tell me a little bit about baby Ola?
Baby Ola. Well, from her, Baby Ola, born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, obviously, Port of Spain.
Hmm.
That is the capital of Trinidad and Tobago. And in Mountain Hospital, I'm giving you the full bio here.
Please, yeah.
And yeah. So, and Baby Ola was always, I was wild as a baby, wild and giving trouble. Um, Lived my first years with my grandmother in Belmont
Hmm.
um, as well. And then coming up to 9 years old is when I moved in with my mom. So it was that type of vibe. Really
Well, Ola, do you mind? Do
being
you
a
mind?
relation.
And Ola, just as you're talking, I have I have a million questions that pop up, and I don't. If you, I hope if you don't mind me asking, why did you go live with your grandmother initially and then not move on in with your mom till later? What was the circumstance? If you don't mind me asking.
No, it's a conversation we have in here. Well, I guess mom and dad was trying to find their way, growing
Mm-hmm.
up very young as well too, and they were trying to find their way financially and in that mental space to
Mm-hmm.
take care of me, I guess. And that would have been the response
Mm-hmm.
to have me by grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
Granny. So that was the vibes, and Granny always set a steady foundation with the religious vibe. She was more religious
Mm.
and that kind of energy, you
What
know.
denomination was your grandmother?
Second,
What denomination of religion was your grandmother? My wife is a Lutheran
se-
pastor, so I have
Seven
some.
Days Adventist.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah. So my mom, they were all into the acting and theater. My
Mm.
Runali, she was into theater, and then Daddy was also into. He was a radio personality and that stuff. He used to host Calypso shows, and he was I would say, a pan encyclopedia. He used to have the knowledge of pan and his program called The Magic of Pan in Trinidad and Tobago.
Mm-hmm.
So that influence with my mother and my father is what brought me into the whole Calypso Olatunji, molding of Olatunji as a calypsonian, loving the Calypso, like really loving the real art of Calypso and theater. So I mixed the two because of my beautiful parents. They are deceased now, but what I'm saying, I know they're still here in
Mm-hmm.
spirit for sure, you know. And so with my parents' influence, this is the reason why Olatunji is into calypso and theater and performing, you know.
Well, what kind of theater? I mean, when you say theater in Trinidad, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Again, like I have zero experience with it. Can you give me like what kind of time period? When was it that your mom and dad, especially your dad, was really involved with theater and that sort of stuff?
Huh. Yeah. Good question. I don't want to give you the wrong thing. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing because my
Oh,
collection of time terrible.
I'm
But
terrible with it too, Ola. Just I love to like try to play. Is it like are we
uh,
talking like the 50s and 60s in Trinidad?
see that? No. That's way back. Bro. That's too long. That's too long. Like that. No, that's too much.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about don't take me for this. All right, from 80s, 90s coming up there.
And what kind of theater was it?
80s.
Like, was it political theater? Was it comedy? Like, what kind of stuff were they doing?
Comedy. She used to do mostly comedy theater. And my
Okay.
mom used to do comedy theater, and then she teach in a prominent school in Trinidad and Tobago. Holy Name Convent is a very good school for girls, Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
and um, yeah, yeah, and for 20 years, so she taught history and drama. So that was her thing.
Can you tell me a little bit? I mean, what little I know in terms of the origins of calypso music and the word calypso, like the goddess
Yeah.
Calypso, literally was like the goddess of innuendo and like not not saying
Mm.
exactly what it is you were wanting to say, but hiding it, couching it in different words, and that often then has
Yeah.
manifested itself in like political commentary. Like a lot of those early calypsos were about
Yeah.
union strikes and oppression and government and
Yep.
can you just explain, talk to me like I'm two, and give me a little bit of a like, am I close to describing what
Well, I
calypso
think
music
you're
is?
very close. And my take on Calypso, right? My take on Calypso. Calypso is a recording. It's a musical recording of history and trending topics, and also trending topics, whether it be political, socially,
Mm,
and all these things through the musical, through the rhythm of the Caribbean,
hmm.
right? That makes sense to you?
Yes, totally. Sorry, I'm writing stuff down as you talk. I'm not ignoring you. I just have
Right.
I'm
So,
taking notes.
yeah. So that is Calypso to me. Calypso, you can speak on topics of the history, on topics to now, and political, socially, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And a Calypso, that's what Calypso is. A Calypsonian is a storyteller. He tells the story, you know what I mean? He's like the poor people's voice, a real Calypsonian. That's what Calypso is, you
And
know?
who were some of the early Calypsonians for you that imprinted on you as a young musician of like, oh my God, you can do that, like that, like who were some of your
Huh.
early influences?
Well, definitely early influences, the parents, parents,
Hmm.
and then my dad. My dad was so entwined, and so he had the names of all the Calypsonians and these things, and he said, son, you must listen to this one, that one. So I know Calypsonians from in the 40s and things like Spoiler. I can tell you about Calypsonians like Lord Executor, Beginner, who sang, Louis, hope is not in vain. Please come back again, darling. Yes, sir. Hope is not in vain. Please come back again. So that is 1940s we're talking about. That is Louise. A song called Louise from Lord Beginner.
Hmm.
And so he used to tell me about these Calypsonians, and I fall in love with this story. They tell stories. Calypsonians always tell story. It's not just one theme, not one topic at all.
Hmm.
You know, they tell all different type of stories. A love story. They will talk about political stuff, social stuff, and in a very funny way, but underneath have a kind of sharp blade. So Calypso is a beautiful thing.
Well,
And I had like Calypsonians like Kitchener, Sparrow, Lord Melody, who wrote plenty songs for Harry Belafonte.
hmm,
Lord
hmm.
Melody had plenty songs like Mama Look a Boo Boo Day, and he was the original singer.
Hmm.
And Harry Belafonte fell in love with Lord Melody, and sang like about 5 songs from Lord Melody.
Well, and then
So,
you have like Roaring Lion, All Women Are Beautiful, like that song then gets like every
ah,
woman, if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty
mhm.
woman. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Roaring Lion.
and
Like
all
it's
those,
just it was adapted
yeah,
and like I grew up like some of the earlier Calypsonians I heard were like Mighty Terror. I remember
mighty terrible.
transcribing a lot of his early calypsos and playing them at like just
Yeah,
because I didn't have a lot of tunes to play when I would go play gigs in Ohio. I mean, like I said, I grew up in a cornfield, so like there wasn't a lot of
hmm,
like great calypso just available around me. So I was like transcribing Mighty
yeah,
Terror and Roaring Lion and Lord
yeah,
Invader and
hmm,
and then you mentioned Lord Melody. That was the first time.
yeah.
Like, can you talk a little bit about the roast culture? I know like now it's called like roast
But
battling,
the
but like
first thing I want to say, right? I want to tell you this first.
yeah.
Yo, I want to tell you, I am so thankful for this opportunity because Josh, I really find you as a rock star, bro. Honestly, I really find you are truly amazing, my brother. Because here you are, as I said, you're coming from Ohio, my brother, and I don't really know Ohio like that, right?
Hmm.
And you're coming from Ohio, and your podcast, your energy, your whole vibe is not just so percussion. You carry Trinidad and Tobago legacy and culture. I mean, it's crazy. And you went to you studied with Phase Two.
Hmm.
And you went to Trinidad and Tobago. I find this is amazing, truly amazing. And you're going to teach this stuff in Princeton. And this is truly amazing, bro.
Well,
You know what I mean? And I want to say thank you for having me here.
Well, you're quite
First thing
welcome.
first.
You're quite welcome, Ola. And also, just I appreciate you and Alicia reaching out to me. I mean, a lot of, I feel like I know enough about the scene in general to be dangerous, but I'm aware every day as
Yeah,
I go on that like
yeah,
there's a million people I don't know about because I just don't know about them. And I appreciated
right.
that Alicia reached out to me, and I'm really grateful for this. I mean, my question about the now I think the term would be called like roast battle, where like two rappers would get together and just
Yeah,
roast the shit out of each other, right? Like
yeah,
you're fat,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
ugly, your clothes suck, like that sort of
Versus
thing.
and shit. Yeah.
I remember listening to it was a folk Smithsonian Folkways recording with Emery Cook of Lord Melody and Mighty Sparrow,
Arrow. Ooh,
a
I
pekong
think I know
duel,
you're talking about it. Yeah.
a pekong
I
duel.
listen to that shit all the time.
Can you just tell me a little bit about like why
Mm.
does that particular strain of like art exist within Calypso? Like why roast each other? I'm curious a little bit about like what is that part of the culture in terms of Calypso? How does that what's the meaning of that in there?
It's the same. It's the same thing that the hip hop culture would have used as well, and dancehall, that I better than you type of thing. Like I better than you when it comes to lyrical and melody and putting melodies together and that kind of vibe. And if you check it out, because Calypsonians used to name themselves Lord Executor. I mean, come on. It had a guy who used to call himself the Mighty Tiger, as you say, the Mighty Terror. Black Stalin, who calls themselves that. So you know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Calypsonians used to call themselves some mean stuff. The Roaring Lion. Imagine you now coming on stage, the Roaring Lion. You don't get real scared. You want to be really, really scared about that for real. But and the thing is,
Until you hear him sing and you realize he's a really nice guy and like
he's
doesn't
a
hate.
really nice guy.
Yeah.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
But he's still singing something that is very, very potent and is
Yeah.
very, you need to hear it now. It's what's affecting the world now, and you need to hear it now.
Mm.
A Calypsonian will come in that kind of vibe, but in a funny way, you know. But I will say this because that started in Calypso tents, like when back in the day of Pretender and Executor and Houdini and these kind of fellas there, Roaring Lion and all. After a Calypso show, what they would do is extemporaneously. So after the show is over and they have the competition, the tent,
Mm-hmm.
a Calypso competition in a tent style, not a competition, sorry, where they come and they showcase the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And after the show is over, they will extemporaneously, which means they will battle each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they call it that extemporaneously. It's an extempo battle. And extempo is like the equivalent to, as you say, a roast with words. And that started, it have recordings of that in the 1930s, 1940s with Lord Executor,
Mm-hmm.
guys like them, Roaring Lion.
Well, the reason I asked the question,
Yeah.
Ola, is because like I identify like when I heard the Pekong duel with Mighty Sparrow and Lord Melody, and Sparrow was
Yeah.
calling Melody ugly. Like he was known as not
Yeah.
being an attractive man, and that's like the boo boo man, and like
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Like, and I saw that, and I sort of lit up, and I was like, yes, like because when I was
Yeah.
growing up, there was a weird sort of thing, at least in rural Ohio where I grew up, where like if you couldn't take someone making fun of you, like then it meant that you weren't actually going to be there whenever they needed you. Like if you can't take a little bit of a like, hey man, your hat is stupid,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
or you're,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, then it meant that you weren't,
Yeah.
we needed each other. And so it was a little bit of a test. And so am I misidentifying the sort of reasons why that's happening in other cultures, or like what, I guess what's the point is my question. Is it a camaraderie thing? Is it a like just to see how good you are at it? Like what's the reasoning behind it?
That's a very good question. The reason behind it is to test out who is really better, number one. And as they say, if it could take talk, and that's a normal thing, if it could take Pekong, I mean, you're good with us. You can chill with us, you know what I mean? You're not too sensitive as well, but it is also a I'm better than you type of thing when it comes to putting words together
Mm-hmm.
and melody and that kind of vibe, you know?
Yeah. Well, okay, I have a sorry to turn. I have a sort of question about the X Factor, your experience on X Factor, and just in general,
Yeah,
like as a Calypsonian who is an ambassador for what it is you. I mean, you walked on stage and you said, "I'm from Trinidad and Tobago," and everybody goes
yeah,
bonkers. Um,
yeah.
how have you felt in terms of like bringing something that is so normal to you and your family and where
Hmm.
you grew up? Like calypso music is like you wake up, you hear it in cars driving by it. It's like it's part of
Yeah.
your DNA, right? Literally. When you go to a place like the
Well,
UK or on a game
mhm.
show where there's a lot of Trinidadians, Caribbean folk in London, it's not like it's you're alone there, but like
Yeah.
how did you feel being an ambassador for something on a stage where basically no one knew what you were doing? What was that experience like for
Yeah.
you?
Definitely. It was a wild one. It was an amazing experience. Yes, I was nervous. I mean, going a show like that, so much people watching. You don't want to let people down. That type of vibe, and it was a it was a learning experience to see how they do their thing over there.
Hmm.
Very professional. Um, Very professional with the staging.
Hmm.
Um, the background scenes to get the show out there is where is who the real superstars are, you know, and I enjoyed that experience.
And
It was amazing.
what's something about that show that maybe like a watcher like myself, like when I'm watching the clips that make it onto YouTube or TV, like
Yeah.
what's the thing that nobody knows is happening? Like what's the biggest thing for you when you were there? You were like, "Oh my God, this is what this is how the sausage is made." Like
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had an idea how TV go, but like that though, damn, it's like hours of doing the same thing over and over just to get that one take. Just you're just doing this thing over and over to get just one take for the TV, and there's a lot of waiting and doing over and
hmm.
waiting and doing over and doing over
Wait, so the
and waiting
performance,
and doing over.
so like the performance that we see online
Yeah.
is not one. Is it one continuous performance, or is that like four or five different ones pieced together?
Four or five different ones, different time zone.
But you have to
But
wear the same.
yeah,
But you have to wear the
months
same
apart.
out. You have to wear the same outfit every time.
Yeah, for continuation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. I'm glad I asked the question because that
Yeah.
I just assume everything I see is one continuous live take.
No, 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 no.
All
Not
right.
even in the live show.
Now I'm gonna go back
No.
and look for like weird movie mistakes and see like if you had a ring on
Yeah.
the wrong finger or something for one of the takes.
Hmm.
Wow, okay. Well, let me ask you. What is some of the
Hmm.
like having seen you grew up we talked about early Calypsonians.
Yeah.
You mentioned people like Lord Kitchener, who I
Yeah.
personally wouldn't say was an early Calypsonian. He was sort of like a second generation of Calypsonians that came after, and like he moved the ball forward in a different way than maybe other
Yeah.
Calypsonians prior to him. What do you see your
Hmm.
role as in Calypso right now? Like, where do you feel like the ball needs to be moved forward? That where it hasn't been, and
Well,
there's no value judgment on like Kitchen didn't do this, but like, what do you see as the need here?
I wouldn't correct you, but I would say definitely kind of a Kitchener.
Mm-hmm.
He come out like in the 1940s, but really got prominence in the 60s kind of vibe.
Yeah.
You can say with he and Pretender being in the same tent and so on and that kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But and then calypso music itself that we would have loved, or you would have loved, Josh, the old school guys, so that what we love coming from these guys because they know the names, they call these names,
Mm-hmm.
like Lord Invader, you know the names, and you don't really hear them so much on the Trinidad radios as
Mm-hmm.
much again.
Mm-hmm.
So I would want to fix that immediately,
Mm.
ASAP, because Calypso is what it is. Calypso is where the real story is where you're gonna really tell the story. I mean, I love my soca music because what soca really is the son or the child of Calypso,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So soca is soca. Soca is going to be soca. It's the soul, which is the beauty and the love of the people. So soca will be soca, but I want to see Calypso reign where Calypso is supposed to reign again, which is on the airwaves on Trinidad and Tobago. and in the world again.
And for what?
That's what I want for Calypso.
Sorry, say that one more time.
That's what I want for Calypso.
Well, how do you? I don't personally know how to do that. So how do you do that?
Huh.
Sorry.
Well, the best thing I can do is research like what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a lot of research with Calypso music and the Calypsonians, and I know a lot about the Calypsonians' names. So I go back with the names and I find out the songs and why they sing the song there, and how and the rhythm and all these things. I just go and research and recycle and bring it back, and you know what I mean.
I mean, one of the
Do
things
that.
that you've mentioned the word history a lot with Calypso, and I've been really fortunate to talk to Kim Johnson a fair amount. And do you know Kim? Kim's a Trinidadian. He has he's a historian. Wrote a book called The Illustrated Story of Pan.
I would love to
And
hear. I
he
would
has a
love to
second
get that book.
edition.
I said you could teach me so much, Josh. I mean, you is something else.
I am not.
I mean,
I don't want to teach
you
you
are
about
amazing.
somebody from Trinidad, but if I can avoid it. But like,
What?
you know, he's amazing. I did a podcast with him. I think you'd enjoy it. But we talked a lot about history in terms of like one of the foundational ways that history and story has gotten passed down in Trinidad is through calypso, is through song.
From Calypso.
This
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
from obvious. You know, this is the same like from the slave trade. This is the way slaves were passing on different informations. They would communicate through song.
Information. Yeah. On the fields. Yeah.
Yes, totally. But one of the things I'm noticing is a little like, or one of the things I worry about, I guess, and this is where I feel like I want to have you talk me off the ledge a little bit. Is I see books like Kim Johnson's, and I'm like, oh my God, thank you. There's a documentation of all this stuff so that I can hand it to someone else and they can look through it, and then I can hand it to somebody else, they can look through it, and basically get the same information over and over and over again and have it reinforced. If 99% of calypso music in the history of Trinidad and Tobago is buried in all of these lyrics that are in the heads of calypsonians and maybe not on the radio like you're talking about as often as it should, how do we preserve the history of what it is you all do?
Well,
I see it in the Steel
people
Man.
like yourself. Well, people like yourself. Okay. No, sorry. What are you saying?
No. I was just gonna say, like, I watch for every year with Panorama, for example, and this is not calypso music per se, but steel drum arrangements that get arranged around soca tunes or calypso music, right?
Right.
There's 40 tunes every year that get arranged for various large bands, conventional bands, pan around the neck, that just disappear.
Yeah.
The arrangements are made, and then there's no catalog of them. I can't go buy the music afterwards, and that scares the shit out of me, Ola, because I see like all of this history just sort of like floating up into the ether. Now, I could be okay with that just as a human and say that's the nature of things, but that worries the snot out of me. And so how do we, or should we, I guess is my question.
It is a tough question you're asking, because I guess that's been not just Caribbean history, it's been more on the oral side and not recorded and written down. And so the best way for me, I realize, is knowing the Calypsonian names, and because the Calypsonian tell the story during this period.
Mm-hmm.
Calypsonians I was always going to speak about what's happening now, whether you like it or not. And so I try my best to just remember the Calypsonians and do my research and my writing downs, because I know that's been a problem, not just Trinidadian history, African and Caribbean, not writing down and recording our history is just oral.
Well, that's
a problem.
It's a problem, and it's one that I, when I talk with Kim Johnson, it's like I feel like you and Kim should get together and write a book about every calypsonian that's ever existed in Trinidad. Like every calypsonian gets a chapter, and there's a bunch of file footage, like photographs of them when they were young, when they were old. Here's different versions of their songs. Here's the progression of Roaring Lion's like thought processes around why he stood up for women when a lot of calypsonians were not. Or I wouldn't say we're not, but we're more aggressive sexually with their lyrics, Like why was why was Roaring Lion, why did he take the stance he did? Why did Mighty Sparrow take the stance he did? Why was Lord Executor talking about union strikes? Like Like I think it's
Yeah.
like it's interesting to know about Uriah Butler and hear his name come up in a a Mighty Terror tune or something. But
Yeah.
who the fuck is Uriah Butler? Why was he important?
Yeah.
What was happening in who's Dr. Eric Williams? Like how do they
Mm-hmm.
relate to all of this? Like that to me is like the I don't know, that to me is the real sort of like interesting context behind why everything is happening, you know?
And why it's important to have
Right,
it down
right.
as recorded. Yeah.
Right. I think
History recorded.
you can look at there's union issues going on here in the United States, and I think if some young
Mm-hmm.
kid right now, if a young Josh Quillen in high school could pick up a book and be like, "Wait a minute, there were union disputes in Trinidad too."
Yeah.
Whoa. All right, I'm in
Wow.
Ohio, and I have something I can relate to historically to different places that I've maybe never understood or been to, you know. And so, anyway,
Yeah.
this stuff is really fascinating to me, and I've always been into it, but I've always had a hard time like if I wanted to know about the history of calypso music, where would I go? Like, where would you recommend? Like that's my like if you were to get a see 18
And
year old
as
Josh Quillen.
I will say it again, you'll have to know the calypsonians, those old school calypsonians and the calypsonians,
Mm-hmm.
because the calypsonians is going to tell the story and the history of the country as well and of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because calypsonians used to deal with worldly topics. You know what I mean? With World War II, because the Rum and Coca-Cola song, when the man sing, when the Yankees first came to Trinidad, all of the young girls were going mad. They say that the Yankees treat them nice, and they get a better price drinking rum and Coca-Cola. Go down Point Cubana, both mother and daughter, working for the Yankee dollar. You know, he's singing about a lot of things going on there. And people hearing rum and Coca-Cola, but there's prostitution he's singing about there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's singing about when the American soldiers came down because Trinidad and Tobago had the biggest American base
Mm-hmm.
in that time in World War II. So that's all that history going on right there.
Mm-hmm.
Where American soldiers used to come and, interact with it. It is what it is. And that is why these guys sing these kind of songs.
Yeah.
So all that is history in one. So you have to know your calypsonians. And that was Lord Invader who sang that song. And he would have tell you the whole issue was going on. When the Yankees first came to Trinidad, you understand? All of the young girls were going mad. They said that the Yankees treat them nice because they get a better price drinking rum and Coca-Cola. You understand? But there's some serious shit he talking about.
Yeah, and was it Gene and Dinah?
Huh?
Gene and Dinah.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, same
Gene
exactly.
and Dinah, Rosita and Clementina.
All prostitutes.
Yeah, bet your life is something they're selling. And if you catch them broken, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make a row. The Yankees gone and Sparrow take over town. That's what he's saying. The soldiers left. It was time for the soldiers to leave now. They already won the war against Hitler, right? And Sparrow saying, now is he running the town now? The soldiers gone, I running the town now. So there's a lot of history with these calypsonians and the songs they sang one time. Is amazing. And we have to keep that, or else we could lose everything.
I think, yeah, and just Ola, I should have just turned the camera on and just let you sing for an hour because that's the best. It's the best. I mean, the more I read a book called "Bury the Chains" by Adam Hochschild, and it's about the ending of the British slave trade, not slavery, but the actual just shipping.
What's the book again, Josh?
It's called
"Bury." I need to write down because I said, bro, you are something else.
It's called "Bury the Chains."
Bury the chains. Bury the chains. Okay.
Yes, bury the chains, and
Continue.
it's about a group of about 12 people, one of whom was a former slave ship owner, John Newton, the guy that wrote the melody to the lyrics to Amazing Grace.
Okay.
He's a former slave ship owner who had a sort of come to Jesus moment later in his life and wanted to end the slave trade. Anyway, but the point is like the Caribbean slave trade in particular. The way that, or just, colonization in general, all the way back to Sir Walter Raleigh, that Sir Walter Raleigh, Christopher Columbus, like for all of the stuff that they did, the steel drum, calypso music, all of this stuff is here because of
Yeah.
a million data points, a million things that happened, including Columbus, including World War II, including British oppression, including the banning of instruments during Carnival, including the banning of dancing, like public gatherings, like all of this stuff. World War II hits, Trinidad has a big naval base, also a lot of oil.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if Trinidad just had not had oil? What if what you had instead was tin? Like
We will
you would have done something with it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, to me, like Lord Invader, Lord Kitchener, Bugsy Sharp, none of them are who they are unless you know exactly what happened to the Carib Indians in Trinidad before they got there. Like this is all connected.
Yep.
And I think having this like somebody, and maybe it's Kim, maybe it's somebody, like there needs to be a whole library filled with just like conversations with people like yourself and Kim, just so that this stuff can get in there, because I feel like there's a lot of students in the U.S. and that's why it's important for me to have you come in and talk. That stuff is just, it goes right over. I think most people don't even, when I say, hey, what's happening in Trinidad in 1940, most people don't like World War II isn't the thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, the world is in a war. Like that should be,
That should be number one, right? Yeah, priority, right?
Right. Did I say something that offended? Did I say something that offended you?
No, something went on technical difficulties, my brother.
It's okay.
This is the kind of conversation I love. History and this is what I like.
Well, let me ask you then. I mean, I've told you everything I'm worried about. Is there anything in the back of your mind that you're worried about? That like if you could go into every elementary school in Trinidad every day for a month and just be like, here's one thing to remember, and then leave. Like you just poke your head in the room, say something, and leave. Yeah. What's the thing that you worry about the younger generation in Trinidad and Tobago, or just in general the younger generation of kids in Ohio, like me, growing up? What's the one thing you would poke your head in every day and say?
I would definitely stand for the calypso for real, because what calypso stand for, I mean, is the only genre. I mean, even in like blues and all, as I heard David Rogers said one time, with blues, you're gonna say I'm sad, and that's where it is. I'm sad. In hip hop is one thing. You talk about yourself, you blink, and you can be number one. R&B is about love songs, and this and that. Mm-hmm. I think calypso have a kind of vibe. You can sing about anything. And calypso is a storytelling thing. It can speak about anything, political, social, love. And with that tool and that instrument you have, I think is a glorious thing. Is a better conversation we could have with people. And with better conversations, is better communities, is all these beautiful stuff. So I would push that calypso.
I mean, as you're saying it, it feels to me like one of the things that's maybe unique to calypso is like, when you say you can sing about anything, like a young 8-year-old kid in kindergarten or I don't know what the system is in Trinidad, first grade, like it being a vehicle of self-expression.
Yeah,
like
that's definitely what it is. Yes, storyteller. Yeah. Tell stories.
All right, so you poke your head in the first week and that's what you say, but I've told you have to do it for a month. What do you say? Yeah. What do you say the second week? Well, you poke your head in after the first week, and they're like, "All right, bro, we got Mr. Ola, we got it. We know calypso." Second week, what do you say to them?
I'm gonna sing the songs that means that they would understand why that calypso is so important. I will sing them calypso songs that I know about, and they was not just singing about the self or a love song. They were singing about a war was going on, World War II was going on, but in a very great, amazing way. Double entendre type of vibe. You're thinking it's rum and Coca-Cola, but he's talking about war. He's talking about prostitution. I will sing these songs for them.
And the third week?
And the third week, I remind them again.
In the fourth week, you make them sing with you. In the fourth week. I think we got a course curriculum here, although I think this is going to be great. In the spirit of my podcast is called Concert Honesty, and the reason I started it was because I was having a lot of moments on stage as a performer where I was
Right.
where students would look at me and be like, that's amazing, I loved it. And inside my head, I'm like, do you have any idea how many notes I just missed? Like, I practiced, and something went wrong. Like, you have no idea.
Mm.
And so I'm kind of curious,
Mm.
like, for a lot of myself included, when I look at you perform,
Yeah.
I don't get the
Yeah.
sense that anything is ever going wrong, you know,
Hmm.
except for maybe when you're
Okay.
like when
You
you were
you know
doing
better than that.
the Bruno Mars thing on X Factor. Maybe your hat, maybe you were hoping to
Yeah.
kick your hat, and that
It was the Mumbo Jumbo number 5. Mumbo
yes,
Jumbo Mumble Bumbles.
Mama Nova, yeah. But like, okay, so maybe your hat didn't go where you wanted it to, but like, can you tell me a little? Can you just share a story of a moment where like you're on stage and you feel like you're about to kill it and you don't, but you have to figure out how to like navigate it? Like, are you willing to share a story of failure on that front?
I guess that one time too in the X Factor, as I mentioned just now, I was going to kill it because I thought I could have performed this song, and smash it and kill it and kill shit. But no, that didn't work. That shit did not work. What a time, boy. When I was defending, because in Trinidad we have Soca Monarch, which is a competition between artists where we sing our soca songs in a show, and the winner is called the Soca Monarch,
Yeah.
right? So when I was defending my title the following year, I popped down. Things didn't really happen the way it's supposed to happen, I guess. But I had to do my thing because it was a competition and it's still going to be judged. So I still had to do my thing.
Well, what went wrong?
Um, the presentation, um, fireworks. Then I mean, I was going on a different type of show this round, and I was going for the more that kind of bullshit instead of performance. So
Mm.
I was going for all that bullshit with the fireworks and the confetti, and that didn't work in the right time. It was too technical in a short space of time to pull off.
And what did you like? What was your takeaway from that? Did you adjust any performances moving forward? Like, what did you learn from that moment?
What I learned, good question again, Kada. What I learned is that I just have to be me on stage because I'm a natural performer, and this makes sense to what we keep cutting off, bro.
It's okay.
We keep cutting off, bro.
It's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were telling me what you learned from your mistake there.
Well, my thing is because I'm a performer, I'm a natural performer. I like to perform and dance and sing. I realize I don't need too much of all these bedazzlement and all these madness. Just a natural performance and do my thing. Dress well. I'm the first prop. I remember I am the first prop before anything. And you dress well because I like to dress like them calypsonians in a suit vibe. I like to wear my suit, mix it up with a little bit afro. So that's my vibe.
I love what you
And let's
just.
keep it my vibe.
I love what you just said. You said that you're the first prop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love like. Sorry, I'm also in like a contemporary music world where we often think of staging and a lot, and how things are looked, but we often forget about how we look. Like we like put all the drums and everything in a specific spot on stage, and it's like, wow, look at all that stuff, and then I put like a flannel on, and like I don't think about what I look like on top past that. But I love that quote. Well, Ola, I have stolen about 45 minutes of your life, and I'm very very grateful for
And
it.
I want to find out so much more about you, though, because I find you so interesting, as I told you before. You are totally interesting. Here you are. You know what I'm saying? A Caucasian male, let's be real, and from Ohio, and you pushing Trinidad culture everywhere. You just pushing our culture. And so, how was it for you to work with Bugsy, though? Like, you working with Bugsy,
Well,
my godfather, because that's my godfather.
I met Bugsy in 2001, first in Ohio, actually. I was a student at the University of Akron, and Cliff. Do you know Cliff Alexis?
That name sounds familiar, but
He's a
if my
contemporary
father was here,
he's a contemporary of Ellie Minette. He's younger, about 10 years
Ellie
younger
Minette.
than Ellie. But Ellie went to University of West Virginia and started the steel band program
Right.
in Morgantown. Cliff went to Northern Illinois University and started a steel band program there. The very first set of steel drums he built in the late 50s, I believe, in the U.S. in St. Paul, Minnesota, he sold to my high school drum teacher, Joan Wenzel, in Dover, Ohio. That's the very
His
first set of
names.
instruments I played with, was a set of drums that Cliff built and tuned. Cliff also built all the drums at the University of Akron, which was about a 30-piece band. And so as a student, I just graduated from high school and I went right into University of Akron and started playing on these drums, and it was normal to me. And then and then Cliff would come every year to tune. And so I was just like, my teacher was like, "Hey, can you babysit is the wrong word, but can you take care of Cliff? Drive him to him from the hotel. Can you get him food?" And so I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And so I just sat in the pan yard with Cliff, and he would yell at me and tell me things about tuning and stories about Trinidad, and while I'm just sitting there just sort of like soaking it all up, and I would go to McDonald's and get him a Egg McMuffin and bring it back, and then I said I'd love to go to Trinidad, and he looked at me and he's just like, "No." It was just like and then so I just kept asking, and that same year Bugsy was a guest artist. And so Bugsy came to the University of Akron, and I sort of drove him and Cliff around with my friend Jeff, and just got to talk. And Bugsy said, "Hey, you should come down to Trinidad." And Cliff turned and looked at Bugsy and was like, "No." But eventually I did end up going down, and FaZe was the yard I went to. And the first thing I want to tell you about Bugsy is he introduced me to Almond St. Rose, who was the seconds captain at the time, and a guy named Castro, and another guy named Earl Charles, all in the second section. And I never understood a word that Bugsy said. For like the first week, I had no idea what he was saying, and I'm just being honest. Like his slang is it's really thick.
I know.
And so like I was just like I understood when he was yelling out C sharp and like when he would scream out letter names, but like past that I didn't understand. So I was just like, okay. But working with him, watching him work, watching his brain work, watching him listen to a recording, like with a little Walkman, and then turn around and just start orchestrating stuff. It blew my mind. It just tore my head open in a really great way. And the way he disseminated music, the way the band responded to him, the overall culture of the yard, like the ecosystem of FaZe's yard in 2002 anyway. There was Ross T. Shaka, and there was a guy named Grover who was in charge of like cleaning up the yard, and everybody respected Grover as much as they did Bugsy. There was a weird camaraderie that I recognized coming from a rural place, but that I didn't. I recognized, but I was like, it's just operating a little differently, and I need to figure this out. And there was like probably 2 weeks. I was there for 3.5. I was in the first 2 weeks. Very few people talked to me other than the folks who were teaching me the music. And then after 2 weeks, the gentleman, the guitar player behind me, I turned around. He tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and he was wearing Army fatigues and the black beret. He was a member of the Black Panthers in Trinidad, I think in the 60s. And he just looked at me and he's like, "You play really well. Where are you from?" And from that point on, Ola, it was like anything I needed. And I felt like I was part of a family all of a sudden. And it like every part of my DNA just like lit up. Where yes, I was white. Yes, I'm a foreigner, and all of those things. But now, because I had just taken the punches for 2 weeks, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but now I'm actually having a conversation with a Black Panther. I grew up in Ohio, where I'm hearing about Black Panthers in a completely different context. Like we should be terrified of this movement, and these are aggressive, violent Black people. And I'm talking to this guy who's just pleased as punch to talk to me, and and I feel like if I went to Trinidad and I saw that same gentleman, he'd give me a hug and give me a rum and coke and some mango chow, and we'd just pick up where we left off. And so you asked me about
sorry to cut you. That means you did 3 panoramas then?
I did phase 2 in 2002. I then went back and I drilled Skiffle Bunch. I drilled BSO in 2015 for the ICP, and then I drilled Skiffle Bunch for Good Morning. And Wrong Again, and there was one other one. Not so long, but anyway. And then I've drilled Cassim, Crossfire in Brooklyn. So like that, the yard for me is the safest place in the world I've ever been.
Because that family vibe is the same.
It's safe. Like it's weird. It's a weird thing to express. It's like it's safe musically. Anything can happen. No one's going to judge you as long as you're pulling your weight. It's safe emotionally, where people you might be challenged, but you're always going to be picked up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're safe physically. You know, I remember a vagrant came running in the yard and tried to grab my iPad
Yeah.
or something, and about 25 people chased that guy down the street, you know?
Yeah.
And like,
That's family vibes.
and it's safe food wise. Like, you're just like, I don't know. Like, and am I saying anything that like is
No,
something
this is
that's
amazing. I find this is amazing to me, for real, because the way how you take the culture, because I listened to some of your podcasts before we talk, right? And I was like, this guy from Ohio teaching this thing in Princeton, steel pan, not just the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, because if you're talking steel pan, as I said, they're talking about the yard, they're talking about our family vibes, the food, locations. You are amazing to this culture of ours. So I really want to know that out. I really wanted to know. And then you're so great with music. Like you could teach me about music. I could jam on keyboards, like I jam on keyboards and shit. But I'm not a musician per se, but I'm a great calypsonian. And I research calypsos, you know, and sing soca and entertain. I entertain a lot. I could entertain. But I can jam. But you know music, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? You numbering music and shit. I'm like,
well,
crazy.
There's the thing. I will say this: the thing that has my soft underbelly, like the moment I feel the most weak in a pan yard, is like, I have an iPad. I have, you know, Kendall Williams or whoever's arranging gives me the score. And so I'm looking at the score. I can watch a panorama band play. I could watch Phase 2 or Skiffle Bunch, run a panorama and follow along in the score and be like, this line I'm not hearing. This isn't coming up, you know. But if you took my iPad away, I feel way more scared, because it's harder for me to get things by ear. That's where my weakness is, because I grew up reading scores, and like, I could sight read a panorama. If you put the double second part in front of me, it gave me 10 minutes. I could play panorama.
Wow.
But that's just a different skill. That's not really a useful skill set in Trinidad, you know. Like that's not the way it works there. But that's where that's been like, for me, if I could spend 2 years just in Trinidad with no iPad, I feel like that would be some pretty heavy medicine for me to take, and would make me just a better musician overall, because that's where my weakness is, you know. And that's not your weakness. You could sit down on a keyboard, hear a tune, and be like, you know, and you could pick it up way faster than I could.
I just jam. I wouldn't even say pick it up. I just jam. I could jam could jam. But you as a real musician, I could sing calypso and entertain, and remember plenty calypsos, and remember plenty calypsonian names and things, because I love it. And that's my vibe. But you are a musician. You get me?
Well,
and that's what I respect.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and Ola, I appreciate you asking the question of me, sort of my background a little bit. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate everything you're saying. I the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because of the generosity I was shown by people like Cliff and Bugsy and you know, Earl Charles and Grover and Tishaka and Earl and Allman. Like, they were people who gave me their time and were not required to. They didn't have to. They could have very easily seen me as an uneducated white kid from Ohio that they didn't need to invest in, but they did. And it changed my life. And so I feel like a deep ethical responsibility, and not even like it's ethically like I'm doing it because it's a real struggle. It's like, no. This is an easy ethical thing to pick up and run with. Like, you know, because if at the end of the day, there's corn soup at the end of the road, like, I will fight that war every day, because that's an easy war to fight. I will fight, you know.
I guess corn soup is the shit. You like corn soup, right?
Well, you know, I like all sorts of Trinidadian.
That's Spaniard food. Corn soup is Spaniard food.
That's right. But Ola, I really hope that well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in the fall or in the spring at Princeton. But also, I really hope that we get to cross paths in Port of Spain. I would love to just follow you around. You can take me to some of your old haunts and clubs. And I'd love to go to a calypso.
Some doubles. 10. Yo, heavy thing, right? Remember, the 10s are not really happening as much again.
Yeah.
My idea, I'm going to let you know, I want to come up with that older 10 and bring back that real vibe. So I'm going to have everything, obviously, with the soca, with your chutney, you know, which is in Hindi music of soca. And calypso, the real experience of extempo. Don't tell nobody, eh? Just don't tell nobody. We're gonna come with the
Well, they're gonna hear it
and
once.
we're gonna have soap percussions. Oh shit! Soap percussions come all the way from Ohio, Princeton. Hey, let me tell you something. And we're gonna have the Ola 10 cut out.
If you want so percussion to play your Calypso tent, we will happily sign up. You know where to.
That will be crazy. Because I saw your resume. I saw it, man.
Well, it might be the most high pressure gig that we have. We're playing Carnegie Hall in December, but I think playing a Calypso tent in Trinidad is higher stakes. But well, Ola, I'm very grateful for your time. I really hope that you stay safe and healthy, and please pass on my best to Trinidad in general. I miss it dearly. I'm hoping to come down in the wintertime, but there's a lot of stuff up in the air still. But I hope to cross paths. Stay healthy. And is there a website or anywhere where folks can find out more about you?
You can find Olatunji on Instagram for sure, Olatunji Music. And I'm so terrible. I recently had my website up. I don't want to give you the wrong information. Oh my God, I'm so terrible. But Olatunji Music is Instagram, and you will get all them details there.
Okay, Olatunji Music on Instagram. All right. Olatunji, thank you so much. Stay healthy, and I will look forward to crossing paths with you again soon. I really enjoyed this.
Blessings, bro. Respect.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah, man.
Bye. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. This podcast is brought to you by Liquid Drum, liquiddrum.com down in Waco, Texas. My good friend Todd Meehan runs an amazing percussion company down there. Great merch, great content. Check him out, liquiddrum.com. Also, Kyle Dunleavy, dunleavypans.com, DUNLEAVY pans.com. Kyle Dunleavy makes and builds all the steel drums that I perform and teach on in So Percussion, as well as at NYU and Princeton. He's an amazing tuner, builder, just a really nice guy, very dependable. Check him out. If you are interested at all in steel pan advocacy, want to learn more about the goings-on in Pan in Brooklyn, check out paninmotion.com. My good friend Kendall Williams, Jerry Guy, Trisha Guy, and Arisha John run an amazing organization called paninmotion.com. Check them out. And finally, Alejandro Mirage runs an amazing clothing apparel company in Brooklyn that is steel pan centric. You can check him out at mangochow, CHOW, clothing.com. I own a bunch of his shirts. They're amazing, very stylish, beautifully made. Check them out. mangochowclothing.com. Okay, hope you're well. Talk to you soon. Bye.